Okay, so this is Discord meeting number 2. I am joined today with Leo Masnada and Stephen Hayward. I am Matthew Mungle. The absences today are Robbie Gow and John McLean. Robbie has been in contact with the group to discuss why he won't be able to make the meeting today, and John continues to be missing from last week. Now, for this week's tasks, we were looking at API building and server setup. So this includes things such as the hosting of files and using Node servers in combination with our virtual environment of choice, which is AltSpace VR. Leo, if you would like to talk more about that
Um,
and how we set up.
the Raspberry Pi has been installed at Matthew's place under his private network. We have forwarded a few ports to gain access to it remotely, including the VNC port that allows us to have a remote access to the desktop of the Raspberry Pi without being actually physically connected to it. Um,
And what does VNC stand for, just for people
uh,
that might not
I
understand
lost
it?
it. It's whoa,
Virtual network connection, maybe?
yeah, virtual network connection, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Um, we also have a SSH port forwarded, so SSH standing for Secured Shell Connection. This one I know it, which allow us to execute commands remotely on the Pi without using the VNC or being physically connected as well. I also set up users which are listed here. I am using the default user, so the Pi user, and I created Matthew and Steven's accounts, which have all the pseudo powers. So um, the three of us can access the Raspberry Pi remotely, um, edit files, install software, remove software, and such. I'm gonna create a user for Robbie when he comes around, just so they all have their own passwords. Um, about the Node server, it was already functional last week, so I just pushed what I've done on the Pi 3 on the Pi 4, so everything's up and running. We just need to open one more port so people can access the mixed reality extensions nodes from Altspace using the Pi as a server and not using the local host functions. Um, we wanted to try and install some software along um, NoVNC, which are clients that allow you to have access to this remote desktop using a browser page. So we could overcome some of the limits of the AltSpace VR browsers. Sadly, everything that's published online so far are either outdated or not compatible with the Pi, so I'm still looking into it for some workarounds. That's basically it.
Okay, okay. That was, I mean, from what we were talking about last night, most of it was pretty straightforward. The only thing that was really messing around with us was when it came to the IP and it came to some of the modem stuff. But apart from that, it's very simple to set up last night. Um, so it went well. It went well. So, Stephen, you were talking about the modular, what was it again? The module loader. Would you like to discuss a bit more about that?
Can you screen
Yep.
share as well, please?
Yeah, 1 second.
There.
Right. So this is just a documentation that I threw together. It just describes how the architecture will work for the module loader. So if I was to show you, sorry, wrong thing. The thing that Leo was talking about yesterday. It's something to want to actually check with you right now if that's
Yeah, to take notes on or print notes for tutorial purposes and stuff.
yeah. Okay. Module loader. It's a work in progress at the moment because I'm currently having an issue with some part of the code. So pretty much defines an interface which allows you to load in different modules, which you can example of what I like.
Okay. Okay, that's
Um,
looking good. It's looking good.
for now, I've separated them into different applications just to get a module loader up and loading, up and working.
Okay. So is that more efficient, do you think, than having them all over the place? Or
What that means is that we can just host one node server,
okay.
multiple instances via AltSpace.
So it's less taxing on the ports or
You have to use one port, so it'll be less fiddling around with.
okay.
You do is link in the module that you want. Have a light module, and it'll just be the light module which you define in the link.
Mhm.
Which would get passed to the object.
Okay. Okay. That's making a bit more sense. It's
This
good that
one,
you've laid out the architecture like that.
for this one, it's got a light ID, so you'd have a light switch on one server, and you'd have the light on another.
Right. Okay.
Between them to turn them off and on.
Okay. So this documentation will be added into the main document at the end of the day, along with supporting UML. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep, sorry, just blanked for a second there.
That's okay.
Example as well. Modules. Okay, the reception bell.
Okay.
That's
So that's
Leo's sound.
nice. So
You need
that
to
just gets
change
loaded in.
your share screens option to stream alt via alt space if you want us to hear.
It's pretty much that sound that you
Yeah,
linked in
but
Facebook.
just for the
So.
record purposes, I guess.
Oh, right. One sec. How do I do this?
It's just the options for your screen sharing, and you go share. What is it? Change
Or
window. Change shared option. Go to application window and select alt space.
alt space.
And now we should get the sounds as well.
Okay.
I didn't get it.
No. All right.
Oh, so it's okay. If you say it works, we're just gonna trust you on that.
All right. Next week I'm gonna finish off the module loader. With it.
I think you have to change again
My device
the
that's lagging. Or
screen share.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with TypeScript?
Not
somewhat.
really. No.
Right. So I was saying that I'll probably have to look up then. What I'm trying to do is just get the load in the custom modules through an import. And I had it working before, but somehow it just suddenly stopped. So I'm a bit confused.
Hmm. Well, we're still only in the design phase, so
Hmm.
having the code be efficient and optimal, that's something we can do later on. We don't need to have everything working before you've
Yeah.
even supposed to. So the fact that we're at this stage in the process already is really good. So there's no pressure on that. We just need to figure out how to set up the MRE and try and get the Raspberry Pi stuff sorted.
Yeah,
That's
if
probably the main
we
priority.
if we need to do stuff that already tested the Pi, so we can actually execute commands on reboot. So if we need to even open one server per object for the first times, it's possible to do pretty easily. So there's no real hurry for the module loader.
Okay. Okay. So if we want to go over to discussing the documentation just now,
Hmm.
just to see where we're at with everything. So I'll screen share just now. So I'll share. Right, there we go. So our documentation is coming along very well. It is getting there. We're just declaring the functionality. We're declaring what we'll need specifically for the project. Our UML is coming together. All of this has been compiled by a combination of Stephen and Leo. We are currently sitting at 24 pages just now. We don't really want that to go any further because we we don't want to have too much going on. Our Discord chat playlist, which will be featured on YouTube, which will have every recording that we do for Discord, can be found here on this section of the document. If we go up, we've got the agenda from last week all here as well, and also a track of the recordings, who's been attending, who's been not attending. We've got our absences here updated to allow for Robbie's message that he'd sent me before. So it's going well. The document is definitely coming together. If we move over to the GitHub environment, I have set up all of the different repositories that each member will be looking at. There's different branches here. So if I click on here, we can see the 5 different branches. So of course we've got the master branch, art room, implementation room, design room, main room. We've also got the actual project going on as well, which is the Collab Virtual Environment Project Implementation Checklist. This has been set up. We've not got every task on here, but we are keeping track of the project for this, and any updates and changes that occur will be put on here by the end of the project. Finally, I wanted to discuss the functionality for our project, which can be found down here. So our virtual environment will be split into different sections. So far, we have a main lobby, which we use to connect players to all the different rooms they'll be able to use. So this will include the design, art, sound, and implementation of all of these different components. We are essentially emulating the concept of games design for a virtual environment. So users will be able to collaborate with each other to create a game at the end by going for all the different rooms. Our design room, which will use a browser-based design website called draw.io. So if I just on that, that'll bring up the website. So draw.io allows for Google Drive implementation so that people can save their designs to the cloud, OneDrive if they've got an account via that, or even save to the device themselves. We are currently discussing how we're going to implement users to save what they design. I think the main one we were looking at saving to was the device itself, Leo. Yeah, that's
Yeah, if we get to do the VNC stuff, it's gonna be device based.
so. I think there was some problems with the security in regards to Google Drive and OneDrive. I think it didn't allow for external based solutions within the actual AltSpace VR. I might be
Yeah,
wrong on that one though. Yeah.
nah, just it doesn't load.
Okay. Okay.
I've got a fallback though if we have to just go for one thing in the alt space browser.
Okay. Okay. Well,
One sec, I'll just find out for you.
we'll be using this system. I'll just click on device just now, create a new diagram. And as you can see from this selection, we can choose what we want to design. So if the player wanted to design a flowchart, what I could do is I could pick any one of these flowcharts as a template, create, and I could design any of the functionality that could be needed for a hypothetical game inside of here. And then when I was done with it, I could just save, and then there we go. The file is saved. It's in my downloads, sorted. So if we move over to the next part, which is the pixel art section, if I click on Piskel app, this is the application we will use to allow people to create a sprite. So if I click on create a sprite, it provides a 2D art environment that users can use to implement their own art. And they'll also be able to save to the device as well. So I'm not going to torture anyone watching or listening to my horrific 2D pixel art skills. So I'm just going to close that again. Close this. So finally moving on to the last, which is implementation. We're still deciding how we're going to implement sound because if I recall correctly, there was an issue with actually recording sounds from within the actual virtual environment, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Um, it needs to be tested, but I don't think it would be possible.
Okay. So we're still looking into that just now, and if it's possible, so the sound section of the main functionality might not be there in the actual document. So we'll keep that as a maybe for the time being. It will probably be replaced by something else though. So the final section of the main functionality will be implementation. So we want to allow players to actually create their own games through their own environment. The one that we've chosen is one that allows for 3D world building. So if I click on play canvas, it brings you here. So as you can see from these demos, it's got a setup similar to almost a desktop-based one such as Unity or Unreal, which is quite impressive for a browser-based solution. But yeah, also it's got mobile functionality as well, and it allows for fast load times. So we feel like it would be perfect for our project's functionality. So finally, we're going to discuss the agendas. So we have been discussing what we have done for the last week. So that will be summarized and you'll be able to read that in the design document. So this week I was setting up the GitHub project for future implementation version control. I was also helping Leo out with the Raspberry Pi, and I was updating the documentation. Stephen, you were doing the conversion to one module loader.
I started creating it, but it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. So
it's going to take a while.
That was started, but to be honest, we don't need the module loader until much later in the project. So we won't need it for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. Robbie has discussed with me already that he has performed his tasks. However, we're not sure what stage he's actually at with the tasks. He said he was going to be sending these to me later on today. So if he has sent all of the stuff that was required from him, I'll be able to change his status to green, but for now it's sitting at amber. Leo was able to build the server, which also allows for everything he was discussing before, such as the individual credentials. The node server has been set up as well, and also VNC, which is still being worked on. And finally, John, who has not been here for the last 2 weeks now. We've decided not to give John any critical tasks that he would have to do in order for development to continue. What we've decided to do is give him things so that he can catch up with the progress that we're at just now. But we are starting to question the longevity of having such menial tasks be applied to John. But we've already started discussing what tasks we want to have for next week. So, for example, we are going to be looking at building the Microsoft project document. Stephen's going to continue scripting and build from Robbie's prototypes. Leo will be investigating the server building and try to virtualize the browsers for the virtual environment itself. Um, Robbie will be continuing to do blueprint designs for the rest of the rooms and drawings. And for John, we've given him another menial task to try out the Raspberry Pi, try to log in. He'll be in communication with Leo at some point in the coming week if he's back in the chat to discuss getting a login for the Raspberry Pi so he can try it out and get comfortable with the environment. And we've also told him to look at previous documents so that again he can catch up and try and catch up to where we're at just now. So that's really everything that we've done for the last week. We've decided to go for a shorter video presentation this time because we've had two absences and there's pretty much everything there in the actual agenda. So we've had an agenda before, we've had this Discord meeting. So yeah, that's really everything. So we will be back roughly this time next week to discuss again. Yeah,
Uh,
guys.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
One thing.
So that's really everything.
If we need a fallback for if the VNC stuff doesn't work at all,
Mhm.
we can use full lab space, and it seems to work quite well.
Okay. Well, we can definitely look at that for next week.
Yeah.
So I think that should be the end of the recording. Yeah.
Um, Stopping right now.